All right. Well, Chris, thanks for coming on today. Tell me a little bit about you. Where are you from and what's your background in the industry?
Well, I'm one of the chosen frozen. I live in Minnesota and it's supposed to be 20 below with a 50 below wind chill tomorrow. So I'm staying indoors. I not going to be playing hockey outdoors.
No kidding.
Um, I've been here almost a native, grew up in Minnesota and spent most of my time here. And started in the business as a commodity trader at the Minneapolis Grain Exchange, buying and selling, screaming and yelling, and enjoyed that. And in 1986, I told my wife we were going to move to Chicago or New York because Minneapolis Grain Exchange isn't the center of the financial industry. But she said, no, we're not going. I'm pregnant and I'm not raising a kid in those cities. So got my Series 7 in 86. Started my own business in 1990. Been doing a lot of different things. Owned my own broker dealer, owned RIA, a hedge fund, did commodities IB, insurance agency. So I've done a lot of different things. And it's been a very good business. Sold my business in 2010, and then got divorced, and now I'm back in the business because, as they say, she got the gold mine, I got the shaft.
I get it.
But it's only money, and I don't begrudge her anything. But we just grew apart. She was 21 when we got married, and but you don't want to hear my domestic non-bliss stories. So, what does this mean for anybody listening? It means stuff changes all the time.
Fair enough.
And I think part of it is to be flexible enough so you can do the things and have a quality of life that you want. And one of the things I will tell you that I've had a great quality of life being in this business. I have four kids. I spent, even when they were in kindergarten and first grade, I would go in my three-piece suit and sit down at the short little table and have lunch with them. Never missed a sporting event, coached my kids in sports, went to all their concerts. And even if you don't have kids, you can relate because you get to
Yep.
do the things that you want to do, and quality of life is number one in this business.
That's cool.
And so I think that's probably the most important message, that if you do the business right, you can have a great quality of life.
That's cool. I've got a few questions for you. One of which I talk to agents every day that are in the business that are just drowning in the day to day. How long did it take before you were able to get to that point where you could remove yourself? And then what were some of the keys, and not necessarily remove yourself, but get back some freedom? What were some steps you did probably proactively that led to some of that? Were you great on standard operating procedures? Did you have team members?
Yeah, that's real important. And I was lucky because the guy I worked for initially, he said, "Yeah, you can study for your Series 7," and he never expected me to come back. But he did have, um, he thought I would never pass because I self-studied. And anyway, so I did, and it kind of surprised him. But I went to work for the guy, and he had structure in place. And I think that's the biggest issue as far as know what you're supposed to be doing,
Right.
because you can drown in the details. And because this business is so detail oriented, you have to be able to do the things, and it makes it a lot easier with AI and everything today. I mean, back then, I didn't even have a computer. We didn't have internet, which was a good and a bad thing because, anybody can go on the internet now and get an AI answer to why should I do this or that. Even if it's wrong, people are going to think it's right. Everything on the internet is true, right?
Yep.
So to have those systems in place is really important. And when I started my own business, there was two of us, and ironically, we found cheap office space on the second floor of a welding supply company. And I was thinking, why are we doing this? Well, it's cheap. And we hired an assistant and we started to scale. And because of marketing, at the time we were doing radio, we went from two guys to 65 guys in about 18 months.
Wow.
And I will tell you that the biggest issue in today's environment is you can put ads on Facebook or any kind of social media. Guess what? You do not have authority. until you prove it to clients. And building authority is probably the best way to do it. And I would venture to say that your best bet for that is doing in-person seminars. Unless you suck at speaking or are deathly afraid of it. I was very shy when I first started. And I'll tell you the story about my first seminar in 1989. I sent away to Emerald Publishing, and they sent me a carousel of slides on my Kodak projector. But it didn't get there because there was a big snowstorm until the day of the seminar, and I didn't know what to do. So I just read the dang thing, clicked the button. One guy came, but I was confident enough to say these are the reasons that you should do this. And he actually in 1989 he bought a $15,000 annual premium life policy from me.
Wow.
And I will tell you that that was a real confidence booster.
No
And the
kidding.
reason he did is because he liked me. Because why do people buy? They like you and they trust you, right? And so many people get caught up in the minutia of, well, modern portfolio says statistically this portfolio should do this and that and the other thing, and you flood people with reason. People buy on emotion and because they like you.
That's cool.
And if anybody out there is struggling, you have to realize even if you just passed your test, 99% more than the people out there.
Yep.
And so don't doubt yourself. But the other thing I will tell you, the number one rule that I had on a little plaque in my office is always do the right thing for the client. Put yourself in their shoes, like they're your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister. And if you do that, you'll have clients for life.
That's cool. I like that. What is your business like now? What do you focus on? What's your specialty?
Right now, I run a nonprofit that we started in 1992 because it came out of a charitable remainder trust that I did for my dad, actually. He had some very low cost basis stock, zero cost basis, in fact, because his grandfather started a company and he had this $3 million block of stock and didn't know what to do with it. And he didn't want to pay $500,000 in capital gains tax
Right.
back in the day. So we did a charitable remainder trust. And part of that was we started the nonprofit. So what I do now is I do the nonprofit, which is kind of a good idea because in today's market, if you do seminars, you can save 8 to 12% on postage if you do mailers. And then I do the workshops at universities. And it just so happens there's one in Minneapolis. It's called St. Cloud State, which is about an hour north of us, but they have a campus 5 minutes away from me. So it's the graduate studies campus. Very modern, costs $150 or $195 to use their 60-person classroom, all the tech that you want. And people come, and I don't have to feed them because it's in an educational nonprofit environment. And I talk about high level stuff, and I call the charitable remainder trust the capital repositioning trust, which I've trademarked. So don't steal it. Uh, but the reason I do that is if you say the word charity, what comes to mind? Writing a check and the money's gone forever, right? So that's a piece that builds credibility because when I say, how many of you have ever heard of this technique? And I have done that since, I don't know, the 90s and done over 2,000 seminars. And when I say, and I raise my hand, how many of you ever had your advisor tell you about this? One or two in the number of years I've doing this have said that they've heard of it. Now, what that does, that builds credibility. So I would venture to say if you find something that's a little different and you're going to build credibility by telling people what their average advisor is not telling them.
Right.
Now, it doesn't matter if they do it or not. It just means that you know what you're talking about.
Right.
So, one of the caveats I always told my reps is read. Read as much as you possibly can about your business and pick a niche that you want to specialize in, whether it's Medicare, know everything you can about it, whether it's estate planning, that was my thing with it bent on charitable giving, know everything you can about it. So I'll give you an example. I did one in December 16th of last year. A guy came and we sat down and he says, I bought Apple stock for $1 a share. I bought 1,000 shares in 1990. That Apple stock is worth $61 million today. He came to one of the seminars. And because I told him about a technique that he had never heard of before, he will become a client of my
Right.
my current spouse. Because I'd say I'm licensed to do one thing, drive a car. Because when I sold my business, I gave up all my licenses. I had all of them. And that gives me more credibility. Now, obviously, you can't do that if you're listening and you have your license, but if you know some of these techniques that are out of the ordinary, you're going to get, if that's your market, you're going to get those high net worth individuals that if he does what I think he's going to do and does a charitable remainder trust, that typically you can earn anywhere from 5 to 10% of the amount that is put into a charitable trust.
Wow.
So there's a lot of things to learn out there. Don't just settle for, hey, I'm going to sell you an overfunded IUL because it's tax-free income. Take the time to learn because if you learn more than the other guy, guess who the expert is now?
Right. That's very cool. So obviously, big believer in niching down, big believer in self-education. What's some things you would have done differently early on? Can you think of anything off the top of your head?
Yeah, I would have chosen a niche sooner.
Okay.
The first year that I came into the business with my Series 7 insurance license, I made 80 grand, which was pretty good in 1986.
Right.
The next year I made 35, I think, because I'm going, wow, that's cool. That's cool. Ooh, look at all this
Uh-huh.
stuff. And it was like, what am I going to do? I can do all this stuff. Well, being a jack of all trades and master of none is not good in this arena. So
Agree.
I finally realized that how did I make the 80 grand versus the 35? I thought, okay, I sold annuities initially, so I need to be an expert in that area. And then as time progressed, I learned about estate planning and I basically self-taught about all these other things. Like even when I did the charitable trust for my dad, I went down to the local library and grabbed the IRS tax code and read it. Now talk about boring. But that was before the internet. And so I had a distinct advantage in that I knew this stuff. Now, guess what? If I told an average, or I asked an average rep what it does, how it works, they would have no clue. Even though it's readily accessible on the internet, you can get
Right.
all kinds of information. So choose your niche early, make sure, do your numbers, build yourself, even if it's a simple business plan on an Excel spreadsheet. This is my client. This is what I'm expecting to make per client. If I do a seminar, I know I'm going to close about 30% or whatever your number is, and you can always get better with that. Um, that way, you know in your head what you need to do every day. And so you're not going to get stuck with the minutia that's going to distract you like it did my second year in the business.
That's funny. That's cool. So it sounds like mailers to seminars went well. I've seen some guys try this. A couple of guys I know that are really successful. I do think they're heavier on the IUL whole life side. But regardless, that's neat. It's something I've never tried. So,
You can, yeah, and I would say it's the message that's most important because you can say, hey, buy a life insurance because you get tax-free income and your money will blah, blah, blah.
right.
Or you could say, did you know that IRS code 7702 has been around for decades and people don't use it appropriately to get tax-free income? So it's how you say it
Uh huh.
that's really important too. And your invitation is hugely important because it's the message. Again, if I came to somebody, and again, it depends on what your niche is, but you know, saying something like paying too much in income tax, we can show you how to pay zero tax. Now you have to be careful and you have to run it through compliance because
Right.
when you make claims like that, you have, especially if you're securities licensed, you really can't say that. But you can say things like, are you sick of paying income taxes? Let's see how we can help you reduce them. And so it's not so much again, it's the emotional. If I say to clients, have you ever, when you wrote the check on April 15th, how did you feel? Like I had a doctor that came to one of my workshops. He made $1.5 million a year, and he wrote a check for $426,000 last April. How does that make you feel? He says, I hated it. I hated it. And so what we did was I have an affiliation with a tax company, which you're not going to find a lot of them that are proactive. Most CPAs and tax company preparation companies are reactive, not proactive.
Mhm.
But I have a proactive one that I use and put him in touch with them, and they are cutting his tax bill by
Wow.
$212,000. Do you
That's
think
wow.
he's going to like me for the rest of his life?
No kidding.
So over 10 years, that's a $2 million savings. Do you think I'm going to get some referrals from that? So build your referral network also. That's
That's
really
cool.
important.
A lot of it
Because,
too is providing massive amounts of value. So that's cool. You've provided a massive amount of value to this guy. How did you learn the marketing side early on? Because, yes, there's a lot of savvy that goes into crafting that right message and outreach.
if you look at like Facebook and any kind of social media, you're going to see a lot of stuff out there. And the ones that probably, and you always have to do A/B testing. In other words, you have one message here and you change one thing in the other message. So if you're going to do a seminar, you send half of them that say one difference. So if there
Right.
is a difference, which one pulls better, but you just test it that way. But by and large, it's tugging at those emotional heartstrings that work better than the technical mumbo jumbo, because you have to realize that most people don't know what a PE ratio is, and they don't, even if they know what it stands for, they don't know how it works and what it means to them. But if you can say, we're going to look at the PE ratio to make sure that you're comfortable investing so you never have to worry at night, or we're going to look at something where you never have to worry about your money going down, especially for young guys, because you're one of the things. When I started, I was in my 20s, and I thought, I don't have any gray hair, and people are going to look at me like I'm just a dumb kid. But when you ask questions about how would you feel if you lost 50% of your stock portfolio when you're 65 years old? So, do you know how long it took Microsoft to get back to even from the market tech bubble crash of 2000, 2001? And they'll go, no. And when you say 17 years, if you're 60, you'd be 77 years old and
Right.
been pulling money out of it. So let's get you somewhere where you never have to worry about your money going down in value.
That's cool.
So
I
that's
love
more
that.
emotional than technical.
That's awesome. That's very
Yeah.
cool. What if somebody came to you today and they were green in the business, brand new? Is there a niche or an opportunity zone that you would point a new agent towards?
Me, I'm the example, because there's, what is it, 46 trillion dollars that are going to pass between generations, the baby boomer generation to the next generations. Huge opportunity there. And that's why I focus on estate planning, because a lot of people just, I mean, as an example, how many states have estate tax? Not federal, but state estate taxes. 12. Minnesota is one of the worst. If you have more than $3 million, it starts at 13% and goes up to 16%. How many people in Minnesota know this?
Right.
They look at the federal estate. Oh, I can pass on $15 million this year, and that's $30 million. We're not even near that. Well, guess what? If they have $4 million or $6 million, at $6 million, that's a $390,000 tax bill to their kids.
Wow.
What about IRA money? Hey, I've done well. I have a pension, I have Social Security, I don't need my IRA, let it accumulate. Now I'm going to have to take minimum required distributions. What am I going to do? Well, let's do a Roth conversion analysis. And by the way, we can save you at least 50% on your taxes by doing a wide variety of things. I mean, one of the things that my wife does is she has a real estate fund. If you put your money into a new property, build it. So you just have a slab, it's called a real estate revaluation. You got a slab, you got the materials and the land value. If you have something that's worth $500,000 in your IRA, now that IRA real estate is worth $250,000 prior to being completed. Your client takes the money out of the 500,000 at 250,000. We just saved them 50% on their taxes.
Wow.
So if you don't know this stuff, get out there and learn it.
That's cool. Where do you think, obviously, it's a lot of sweat equity. Where do you think somebody should start trying to unpack all of this?
Find out what you have passion for, I would say. I mean, me starting as a commodity trader, I like trading, but I will tell you that staring at a screen all day long is boring as heck. I'd rather be doing stuff like playing those things,
Right.
playing my guitars and so again, it's about your quality of life and what you have passion for. I always wanted to give back, so that's one of the fun things about the nonprofit. But find out, what you like. As an example, at my advanced age, I still play hockey. I'm on two hockey teams. So I try to give back to hockey. I coached the first Minnesota Wild blind hockey team. I help Warrior Hockey and raise money for, So find a passion and you can network with that. And what do you do? And people will come up to you, hey, I'm Chris, how are you doing? And they say, what do you do? Well, at that point, if you don't have your elevator pitch down, you need to do it. What I do, well, I help cut taxes on IRAs by 50%. I help people eliminate estate taxes, and there's so many one-liners that you should have those written down according to what your passions are,
That's awesome. I
you
love
know.
that.
So
Um,
it's important, even just when you meet people, because you really want to say, hey, what interests you? Like the guys that I meet, I've played hockey with for the last 30 years. We've got guys that play in a band and guys that, do all kinds of stuff. I have my captain on my one team, he's an attorney at a big law firm downtown Minneapolis. I've sent him like 8 clients already,
right.
so don't be afraid to talk to people.
That's cool. Well, tell me about the guitars, and it looks like, is that a Who? The Who poster behind you?
That is a Who poster from 1970. And the ticket prices, interestingly enough, that was my mom. She gave that to me. The ticket prices were $4 to $7.50 a ticket.
That's cool.
So pretty cool.
That's
Yeah.
very neat. All right. So obviously, did you mention you're in a band?
Yeah.
Okay. What does that look like? What are you specializing in? What do y'all enjoy there?
Well, because I'm so old, most of the guys I've played with are probably 20 years younger than me. So they grew up listening to 90s rock, grunge, Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Chili. I
Uh-huh.
love Chili Peppers because Flea is a beast on the bass and I play the bass. So we kind of do some of that and a little bit of everything.
That's cool.
So kind of an eclectic mix of just weird stuff. I mean, not your typical, I'll play anything. The only thing well, yeah, I'll pretty much play anything. Not that good, but it's fun to do.
I love that. That's awesome. Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time today. I think this was super valuable. Agents that are listening, yeah, it sounds like definitely encourage you to go find your niche, find something you're passionate about, and make sure you're really good at clearly defining what your thing is. Have your elevator pitch down and explain the benefits to your client. So, man, I appreciate your time today. Thanks everybody for watching. We will see y'all in the next one.